You change the key. Jaya, that's it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Canto Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Hadirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the second day of September 2022 in San Diego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Dravida Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 5, The Creative Impetus. Text, chapter 26, a description of the hellish planets. Text number 26. Just read it myself. Yas tvihavai sarvarnam bharyam dvijo retaha pahiyati kamal mohitas tam papakatam amutrat reta kuryayam patayitva retaha sampahayanti. Translation. If a foolish member of the twice-born classes, Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, forces his wife to drink his semen out of a lusty desire to keep her under control, he is put after death into the hell known as Lala Bhaksha. There he is thrown into a flowing river of semen, which he is forced to drink. Purport. The practice of forcing one's wife to drink one's own semen is a black art practiced by extremely lusty persons. Those who practice this very abominable activity say that if a wife is forced to drink her husband's semen, she remains very faithful to him. Generally, only low-class men engage in this black art, but if a man born in a higher class does so, after death he is put into the hell known as Lala Bhaksha. There he is immersed in the river known as Shukra Nadi, you can tell what that means, and forced to drink semen. Going on to text 27. Yeah, because it's a common thing here in this chapter that if you know better or should know better, or you're pretending to be a Brahmin and you do something, it's much more of a sin.
But they don't have to go through this.
They get some punishment, but it may not be so severe.
Remember, every Shudra goes to Puyoda and drinks the river of school instead. So every Shudra it says goes to right.
Yeah, it's built in. I'm glad you're so concerned. Sorry. I had a Maha date. These dates they're good, but they're also a little sticky. They stick in your throat. Okay, we're on text 27 now. Translation. In this world, some persons are professional plunderers who set fire to others' houses or administer poison to them. Also, members of the royalty or government officials sometimes plunder mercantile men by forcing them to pay income tax and by other methods. After death, such demons are put into the hell known as Saramayadana. On that planet, there are 720 dogs with teeth as strong as thunderbolts. Under the orders of the agents of Yamaraj, these dogs voraciously devour such sinful people. Well, purport. In the 12th Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that in this age of Kali, everyone will be extremely disturbed by three kinds of tribulations: scarcity of rain, famine, and heavy taxation by the government. Because human beings are becoming more and more sinful, there will be a scarcity of rain, and naturally no food grains will be produced. On the plea of relieving the suffering caused by the ensuing famine, the government will impose heavy taxes, especially on the wealthy mercantile community. In this verse, the members of such a government are described as dasyu, or thieves. Their main activity will be to plunder the wealth of the people. Whether a highway robber or a government thief, such a man will be punished in his next life by being thrown into the hell known as Saramayadana, where he will suffer greatly from the bites of ferocious dogs. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Udmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I thought I'd read a little bit first from the 12th Canto. Prabhupada often refers to this section of the 12th Canto, which predicts what things will be like as Kali Yuga progresses. And he was amazed, especially by one thing. If you hear, he often mentions this, Lavanya Kesha Dharanam, which means that people will be especially concerned and absorbing their hair. And Prabhupada took it to mean that men will think that they're very beautiful with long hair. And he said, when I came to America, I saw that this was actually happening. He came in the hippie period when there was, men were wearing all these long hair. And he says, confirmed. But yeah, I know, but they didn't think, oh, I'm very beautiful from the long hair.
Didn't Krishna, when he saw himself, he thought he was really beautiful?
He did. Can I read this, please? Okay, we're now in chapter 2. I'm just going to read the translations for about 10 verses, because it's really remarkable to see how many of these things are manifesting now. And this was written 5,000 years ago. It's very interesting. So this is just a translation from the beginning of chapter 2 of the 12th Canto, called The Symptoms of Kali Yuga. Sukadeva Goswami said, "Then, O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali." Yeah, you can see it. In Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. And law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. Text 3. Men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend on deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's expertise in sex, and a man will be known as a Brahmin just by his wearing a thread. Text 4. A person's spiritual position will be ascertained merely according to external symbols. And on that same basis, people will change from one spiritual order to the next. A person's propriety will be seriously questioned if he does not earn a good living. And one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. Text 5. A person will be judged unholy if he does not have money, and hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue. Marriage will be arranged simply by verbal agreement, and a person will think he is fit to appear in public if he has merely taken a bath. There's a whole process to putting on oils and everything that's completely lost now. And the baths are also being lost. People aren't even taking enough baths daily. Text 6. A sacred place will be taken to consist of no more than a reservoir of water located at a distance, and beauty will be thought to depend on one's hairstyle. This is the one, Filling the belly will become the goal of life, and one who is audacious will be accepted as truthful. He who can maintain a family will be regarded as an expert man, and the principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. As the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. So, I'll go back to the part of the Bhagavatam. But you can see how so many of these things are becoming accepted. It's just the way it is. And we're only near the beginning of the Kali Yuga. It's only 5,000 years in, and it lasts for 432,000 years. So we should get out while we can. So here you have, is this the last one? We're near the end of this description of the hellish planets. But one of the things that is very important to remember or to get from this chapter is that this is completely unknown. The people today, not only in America but all over the world, are generally becoming more irreligious because of the advent of science, because of the corruption of religious leaders. We've seen that a lot. That's in America. I read that that's one of the reasons, especially young people, are not willing to take part in any organized religion. They may be, they're spiritual. I'm going to do my own research, whatever, but I'm not going to church every day because there's so much corruption. So, when, as Krishna says, yada yada hi dharmasa glana bhavati bharata abhyutanamadamasya tadavanasvajamyaham, that there are so many discrepancies in Dharma. People who claim to be Dharma, who claim to be religious, turn out to be rogues and rascals. And like this in Russia, there's this war going on, and this Putin guy turns out to be a major, Rakshasa type demon. You just threw some guy out of a window. That's a way that it's something else now. It's called FSB. It used to KGB. You know, he was a very wealthy leader of one of the main oil companies, but he was in the hospital, and it said, oh, he died by falling out of a window from it. Yeah, right. I mean, he was critical. He was critical of the war. So this is. You know, it's out and out right from the pages. Even the Rakshasas are not as irreligious as you know, this business and the war crimes. It's horrible, and this is just daily news now we're getting. And before, it was happening in different places, like what was it? The Burmese. What was in Burma? There's this whole race of Rohingyas. They're just like torturing and killing, and it's horrible. It's horrific. So that's the nature of the age we live in, and the only hope, actually, the only countervailing force that can get pushed back this demoniac tide, is this genuine Bhakti movement. Started by Lord Chaitanya, his Gaudiya Vaishnava, and so wonderfully expanded and carried forward to the present by Srila Prabhupada and his heroic activities. So in that regard, we have a great responsibility, because we can see it. You can see the whole thing degrading. And in my short lifetime, you know, relative to the ages in the Bhagavatam, things have gotten more graphic. Of course, there was a whole period of, you know, when the fascists came to power, and the German, you know, that whole thing, and that was horrific, you know. So it's not. But when I grew up, we didn't have that. In my childhood, yeah, there was crime, but you didn't hear about these mass shootings and, you know, people just going off and like that. So it's got heavy energy of degradation has taken place, and so we have a responsibility, as I said last time, to become serious about Krishna consciousness, become empowered and enlivened, so that we can impress people to hear, you know, read the books, and you know, become interested in Krishna consciousness, because it alone can push back this demoniac tendency among people. So and what is the process? I hear a lecture every day. Prabhupada I was just hearing these wonderful talks in the first chapter, first canto, second chapter, where there's about 20 verses starting with text 6, what is real Dharma. And at the end there's 4 or 5 verses. And most of you are familiar with this pamphlet called The Reservoir of Pleasure. It's probably still current. I don't know if we distribute it much anymore. But in a day, U.S. Nirantar Prabhu, he was famous one day. I remember this. He was on the subways. He distributed 2,500 of them and got donation, maybe a quarter for each one. And he was a big distributor. Subways could be huge. Even I did $360 one day on the subways at Christmas time. Yeah. So, but the essence of that Reservoir of Pleasure is an essay by Prabhupada. It's actually from a lecture, and it's from a lecture from this section on Shinvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shravanakirtan. You know, it begins out talking about the name of Krishna. It is, you know, it's full of spiritual pleasure, like that, very attractive. So what's being said there? We should never forget that Bhagavatam is spoken because the sages were seeing with their foresight. They could see the development of Kali. It was on the cusp of Kali Yuga, and they could see all this stuff that was going to happen. So out of compassion, they came together and they formed this sacrifice. What are we going to do? And what came out of that was Sukadeva Goswami eventually comes and speaks to Maharaj Pariksit, who's sitting, you know, for 7 days. And the Bhagavatam contains the instructions for how to counteract the demoniac nature of the Kali Yuga. And so, and there's so much in the Bhagavatam really about chanting the holy name. Right in the first chapter, we get this memorable verse: Apanak sangsatim gauram yannama vivishogunan tatak sadjo vimujeti yadbebeti swayambayam. That Apanak sangsatim, those who are entangled in this the samsati and the samsara of this age, yannama vivishogunam. But if they somehow or other chant the holy name, even unwittingly, even by accident, it can counteract so much of the sinful reactions that are burdening someone and pushing them down into a hellish planet. You know, it's such a blessing when you read these hells and you know that in the next chapter, next canto, we're going to read about Ajamil. But then there's also Chitraketu, this wonderful story of Chitraketu. And there, I won't go into the whole story, but he's a king whose only son dies. And he's shocked, you know, he had a whole millions of wives, you know, and nobody can get pregnant, you know. And so finally he gets a blessing. And how's it go? Then he gives his favorite wife some sweet rice or something, right? So she gets pregnant and gives you know, birth to a son. So he's overjoyed. But then he starts ignoring all the other wives. They get envious. They murder the son. And he freaks out. I'll never forget the scene where he's banging his head against the walls of the corridor in the palace. You know, it's so crazy. So now I think Narada Muni comes and brings the son back to life, and he starts preaching to him. Lord should tell you the same thing happened. You remember when Shiva's son? And so from that, you know, trauma and that instruction, he basically takes sannyas. And then in 7 days, he's chanting this mantra. And within that mantra, or maybe it's when he gets a vision and the Lord appears to him, he chants a prayer. And there's one verse that I remember. I don't remember the Sanskrit. That I could never figure out the meter of those prayers. I mean, I figured out incredible meters from Rupa Goswami, but these they just so. It describes how just hearing, not just chant, but just hearing one name of Krishna, you know, destroys all the sinful reactions like that. Which, of course, it has to be from a pure source. But the power of this chanting, I mean, we experience in our own lives how it just changes your whole character. You know, I mean, I try really hard not to step on any little crickets when I'm taking my walk. You know what, Eddie? I'll tell you a little story. It sounds funny. But I keep thinking of this. For 20 years, I would visit Alatra twice a year. My friend Indra Pramad. You know Indra Pramad? And he lives there now. And so I would visit him there. And so he has in his chart, there's an influence of some planet where he's always interested in fish, you know, so he's always had a fish tank, and now he has a pond where he feeds the fish. So there's also little frogs in there, you know. So the room that I would stay in was right near the pond, very idyllic. So I come back from one of my trips there, and I open my suitcase, and there's a frog in my suitcase. He got in there because I would... So instead of doing what I should have done, which is capture the frog, put him into a jar, and take him down to this lake, you know, this artificial lake we have down here by the, we used to have the picnics before you done. Anyway, there's some water, you know, the bay, and put him in. I said, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" So I got the frog, which I'd done with so many big bugs, you know, before I got the electronics, there's no bugs in there anymore. And I would capture them, and then I would throw them out, and they would float down onto the sidewalk, and they'd be free, you know. But then after I captured this frog, and I threw him out the window, I realized, oh my God, he can't do that. And I heard a splat, you know. I said, oh God, I've just killed this poor frog. You know, for an innocent frog just wandering. And I still think of that to this day, as if I, you know, killed that frog. But when I was a kid, I'll tell you, I was a budding little demon, like many of us were. And me and my friend, this is another thing I'll never forget. It was summertime, and there was a spider web, but it was kind of low, so you could really see the spider in there, you know, waiting. And so and he had one, I think, moth or something that he'd already captured. I don't know if you know, they don't eat them right away. You know, they wrap them up. So these poor moths, you know, are living, and they know what's in store. Well, they don't know, probably doesn't. But I said, well, this is fascinating. So me and my friend, we went out and caught some moths, and we would throw them into that web and watch as the spider would come. I mean, a lot of kids do stuff like that, you know. And I was just thinking, geez, you know, I was instrumental in these poor moths, you know, getting tortured by this spider. So this is amazing in this modern age. there's so much violence going on, you know, so much hard hearts. People are becoming so demonic, sociopathic, even at the top of the, you know, political realm. And we're trying to spread the exact opposite. You know, this paradukkha dukhi. The whole world is operating on paradukkha sukhi. You know, you see someone in pain, people feel happy. Oh, at least it's not me. So that's our one of the central principles of Krishna consciousness is this phrase paradukkha dukhi was I think describing, yes, Sanatana Goswami, I think by Raghunath Das Goswami was describing Sanatana Goswami's you know, mercy. And feeling of empathy for people, you know, somehow people are hurting, let me see if I can help them. And of course, what's the best help that can possibly be is what we were helped with. The holy name, the science of bhakti, the sangha, everything that we're given that by Prabhupada's great effort, you know, and it comes all the way from all the acharyas and from Krishna himself, is that the only real remedy to all these problems, and just like this climate change, they're so dramatic, they're not going to do anything about it. You know, when Exxon, back in the 80s, early 80s or earlier, they had their scientists. They got the best scientists. They can pay them so much, you know. And they figured, yeah, you know, the climate is going to be wrecked by all the carbon monoxide. So what was their response? You know, to try to mitigate that, or, you know, no, well, what can we do in order to convince people that it's not going to happen? In other words, we have to have some disinformation campaign that will say, well, there's some doubt, maybe not, you know, like that. Why? Because their whole being is focused on making money, maximizing profits, the bottom line. Totally demonic. And so, you know, everyone kept pouring out the carbon dioxide until finally it becomes obvious. I mean, the Colorado River is drying up. That's where we get our water. The Yangtze, one of the second biggest river in the world. And on the other side, you got the floods in Pakistan, like 40% of the country's covered. It's insane. It's happening right now. So the answer is not some technical thing, it's not some scientific thing, it has to be a change in heart. And people need to accept the principle of simple living and harmony with nature, simple living, high thinking, natural, you know, which is only possible when you're getting the higher taste of Krishna consciousness. And you're drinking in this wonderful philosophy that we have all the time. I found it fascinating when I finally came to the 12th Canto. Vijay was there when we were editing the Bhagavatam. The 12th Canto was actually done before the 10th Canto, and we went back and finished it. But I remember when I read this, I said, "But this is amazing that this book 5,000 years ago, these things are coming from the headlines practically." The taxation and people becoming disturbed by the nature of the age and the loss of mercy, the loss of memory, the loss of longevity, all these different things are obviously happening. So what are the effects of reading the Bhagavatam like this, and you see the accuracy with which they predict things, is that it gives you faith in the whole book. In other words, this is the absolute truth. Even though there are so many things, like we just read in the same chapter, about the geography and the cosmos and things, that it seems, is that really correct? And many devotees, or a certain number of devotees, that was too much, I mean, I learned in 3rd grade that the sun, is a solar system. It's only 5 billion miles wide. What is this, The sun is the source of illumination for all the stars. They're not really independent suns, they're just moons. I can't believe that. I'm blooping, I can't do it. But that's foolish. As Bhadri Narayan loves to tell you, the scientists themselves believe, incredible things, that when they get some more information, they have to throw that away, right? They just keep revising it. So what's the point of putting your faith there? So, and we have been, our faith, in the chanting, anyone who gets serious about it, and not even chants 16 rounds, but chants some significant rounds every day, was going to feel the benefit, is going to feel his, the blessings of Krishna in his life, and become more attracted to the deities and the devotees and the prasadam and the lifestyle and the books and everything else. So there's obviously some great power there. you see. So that is, to me, is a confirmation of, and it's totally mystical. There's no scientific reason for that. So therefore, it should increase our faith in the book. And that faith is so basic, so important. Prabhupada says in one place, I highly recommend, by the way, that if you try to hear, I know it's a little difficult to understand the accent at first, but to get accustomed so you can hear Prabhupada's lectures regularly, because the potency is just, what do you say, off the charts, And so here is describing how, the Bhagavad Gita, the glories of Bhagavad Gita, and in Bhagavad Gita, is meant to instill faith. That by hearing Bhagavad Gita regularly, you're hearing Krishna. You should know you're speaking directly with Krishna. He's not different from his book, which is like pretty amazing. And that it should instill faith in Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he speaks about himself so many places, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter, everywhere. And that's the foundation. We're not that body, pure spirit soul. And there is a God, and God is Krishna. The whole movement rests on this idea that, what is that? Ete Changstakala Pungsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. This is called the Paribhas Sutra, which is not even a whole verse, but a part of a verse can be the foundation of the whole Bhagavatam. And the context is, it's in the, what is it? 3rd chapter of the first canto, I believe, 328. And he's going through and describing the different Leela avatars. And he talks about Matsya, and Nrsimha is mentioned there, and even the 4 Kumaras, they're Sakyavesh, but they're in. And Krishna's on the list. Krishna and Balaram. They're also in the list. And then he goes on and he mentions Kalki, which is also at the end of the 12th canto. And then comes this verse. All of these incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of Krishna. But Krishna is Bhagavan himself. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That's such a, Krishna is Bhagavan. Who is Bhagavan? Oh, he's got the 6 opulences in full, you see. But the basic thing we have to learn is that from him, everything emanates. The source of everything. That's the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, and it's in the 10th chapter, in those 4 essential verses. And it's also, of course, in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, where it says, Aham evasameva agre, nanya jatsada satparam, paschadaham yedita yo vishisheta sosmyaham. That before there was anything, I existed. And after everything is manifested, I only exist because it's all my energy. And when everything is drawn, I still will exist. So that person who says that, and this is true, that's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the foundation of the whole Vaishnavism. And what's the foundation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism? 3rd verse of the CC. Yadadvaitam brahmopanasati tadapyas satonobha. Yatmartanayami purusahiti so sankshipabhava. Shadaishvarya purno yahiya bhagavan satsvayamayam nachetanyat krishna jagati padatatvam paramiha. This is the verse that says that Lord Chaitanya is not different from Krishna. And therefore, that Brahman effulgence, that's the effulgence of Lord Chaitanya's body. That Paramatma, that's the expansion in everyone's heart of Lord Chaitanya. And Bhagavan, there's nothing beyond Bhagavan, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who is Krishna. They're the same person. So that's the 2 things that this whole movement relies on, that our faith in that Krishna is God, and Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. And the line coming down, the pure acharyas, they can give us instruction suitable for us, the same instruction given so that we can understand. And that's what Srila Prabhupada has done. So this existence of the hells, this should make us serious, Now we should know that if we're seriously chanting, we're not going to visit these hells. But as I mentioned, what about that Paradukkha Dukhi? Everyone's walking, it's like they're walking the plank, or they're walking, they're all ready to, and no one knows it. I take my walk and there's all these young couples, and 20 years old, and you can see they're right at one of these verses, right? Illicit sex. Yes, there's some pleasure there, but look at the result. Sense gratification, as Krishna says in the Gita, like nectar in the beginning, but poison in the end. But that poison can be a lot more and more severe than the pleasure. The pleasure is a little flickering thing, and the pain goes on for millions of years. So where's the percentage? Isn't it better to invest in Krishna consciousness? Well, yes, there's a little austerity, you know. But then at the end, there's unlimited, ever increasing happiness. So who would not take it up? Who would fail to be attracted? It says in the second canto. There's a verse, famous verse. How does it go? Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama hudadidi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That whether one, the important to remember is that this comes after a list. It's all like a shopping list, almost. You know, if you want good health, then you worship Surya. If you want a nice wife, then you worship Uma. If you want strong senses, you worship Indra. This goes on like that. There's a whole bunch of demigods. But then at the end, it says, if you're really intelligent, udara di, means you're really smart, then whether you're without material desire, or you're full of all kinds of desires, or you want liberation, you will worship the Supreme Person, Krishna, with intense devotion. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. But it's the verse that comes after that that I wanted to share with you, and I should have called it up, but give me a second here. You remember what chapter that's in? Is that in the second chapter or third chapter? I forget. A comma. All right, a comma. Oh, comma. All right. It is 2:3:10. That's the comedy. And the next one, no. So the next one says, all different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Lord, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. There's important instruction. And the next one, which I'll tell you a story, because I spent so much time with the editing. This is a pretty amazing story. So, if you read I think it's in the Lilamrita, but it's definitely in the Hare Krishna Explosion, which is Hare Griva's own remembrances of his days with Prabhupada. It's quite a wonderful book. And he tells how he began his editing career. He came and he was, Prabhupada, you know, he was also already doing some editing with BTG, you know. Prabhupada knew that he was a professor, you know, of English, you know, so it was Krishna's arrangement. Right there in 26nd Avenue, he just popped up. And so he said, so he's looking at one verse, and in the first canto, and Prabhupada said something like, "Oh the king," and that Hare Krishna said, "Oh, is the king's name O? Oh the king?" But oh no, it should be O king. You know, this is some things like that in the Bible. So he offered to put it nicely. You know, I can fix that. So, but yes, go through the whole book and put it nicely. In other words, he was authorizing him to edit. This is the first canto that Prabhupada already published and everything. Because he knew it would be more impactful if it was good grammar and everything like that. And, you know. So then he opened a closet, and there was the second canto manuscript which Prabhupada brought with him. He wrote that also in India, but he didn't get it published, but he carried it with him. He had a big pile of pages. But he was so frugal, you know, probably every penny, you know, was penny, that he would type all the way to the end of the page in the very thin lines. You know, he had this typer. He was typing with 2 fingers. And so there was no room to edit. You have to have room to mark the green, you know. So, well, you have to retype the whole thing, the whole second canto. He said, oh my God, you know, so probably, yeah, it's a lifetime of retyping, you know, he's joking. So Hare Griva was assigned, and so that's what we have. And I have facsimiles of that original and the retyping on my computer as part of my editing job. So this verse, I won't read the Sanskrit, Gyanam Yadapanavadini Gunomi Chakram. So here's the translation. This is the verse after the one I just read. Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment. And being transcendental, it is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? Now, I think this is a great verse, and I was thinking memorizing, so I looked at the word by words, you know. But here it says, Harikatasu. That's Harikata, that's Krishna Katha. Who could fail to be attracted to Krishna Katha? But that's not in the translation. I said, what's going on? So I looked at the original, and I looked at retyping. And it was, I don't know why or how, instead of transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord, it should say, which Prabhupada wrote, and he typed, transcendental vibrations, transcendental thought, words, in relation with the Supreme Lord, results in knowledge, resulting in the complete suspension of the ways. Such knowledge is self-satisfying and is free from material attachment. No, such vibrations, such Krishna Katha is self-satisfying due to its being free. So, wow, that's a whole different thing. So that's going to eventually appear in the Bhagavatam. But that's the whole ball game, the whole thing. Why we have this? Why did Prabhupada work so hard to write these books? You know, give us these books, to give us the word, the subject matter, the writings and the philosophy that we can hear and repeat and meditate on, and it transforms our life. That's how we get purified. That's the meaning of, back to the verse I was hearing, Shinvatam Sukata Krishna, that when you get a taste, the whole earlier part of how to get a taste for hearing and chanting. And the most important Krishna Katha is, of course, Kirtan, is a holy name, don't get me wrong. That is the basic principle. But there's also all of the supporting literatures that have been delivered to us. The Gita, the Bhagavatam, the CC, other books, Nectar of Devotion, Ishopanishad, other books that Prabhupada gave us, which all provides us with the purification of heart and the interest, the development of faith, so that we can, you know, practice and yes, practice some of the austerities and undertake them. So that's the thing that will turn back the tide of everybody going to hell, is that the transcendental sound vibration, whether it's Harinam Sankirtan, of course, was the basic principle. But then the interest generated, yes, take this book, and you know, then they're directly associating and hearing from Prabhupada. He said like that I'm doing kirtan by writing these books, dictating them or typing with kirtan, and those who are able to read, they're hearing, and that hearing is what really will transform their life. So we have the great medicine that we can take and should take, you know, nicely every day, and progress in our purification, so that we become more so potent and we can give others the interest in it, and also give the transcendental words. And then there's unlimited, you know, pleasure to be enjoyed. Once you get and that's part of these verses. Sundvatam Zakataka Punya Shavani Punya Kirtana. So you become purified. And then comes this verse I chant every time, Nashtaprayasha Badrishu, when the abhadras, the unwanted things, the lust, anger, greed, unwanted desires, all of these things in the heart we've been carrying for millions of births, that becomes cleansed by Krishna himself in the heart. Vidunoti, he's doing it. And then you become nishta, you become fixed in devotion, you're irrevocable, right? And so in that you keep on going, and purification takes place. In that state, you're not so much affected by the modes of passion and ignorance and their concomitants, lust, anger, and greed. You're more in the mode of goodness, getting to the mode of pure goodness. And then as you progress, evam prasanna manaso, your natural joyfulness comes out. We're naturally anandamaya vyasat. So that the Krishna consciousness is expanding, and you're more and more enlivened in devotional service. Prasanam Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangha Sajayate. From knowledge comes realized knowledge, right? Actual experience, and you're getting that progressively. And you're liberated. Why? Because the unwanted desires are being thrown out, and you're not attracted to the material energy. That attraction is being directed to Krishna, you know, and devotees and devotional service and all these things. And then, vidyate vidya grantis chidyante sarvasankshaya chiyante jasikamani drishte vatmanishi. Said all the knots in the heart, those knots which have bound us to this material world since time immemorial, are cut asunder. The doubts are completely dissipated. Why? How can there be any doubts when you're getting personal realization, you see? And drishte vatmanishure. One sees oneself and one's master. That's how it reads. And or it means within oneself one can see the Lord. He appears. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. So this is it's right there in the second chapter, this progression. We made a book out of it called Dharma, the Way of Transcendence. Prabhupada spoke on these verses. So that's the practice that we're engaging in. And the more that we are strict in our sadhana and we experience this, the more that we'll be enlivened to give it out, and people will be attracted when they see the devotees totally blissful, and not doing any of the craziness that they're doing, but just chanting Hare Krishna, taking prasadam, chanting these beautiful descriptions of Krishna. Because Krishna is unlimitedly beautiful and unlimitedly blissful, and when we become more Krishna conscious, we'll also become more blissful. But that's our natural state. Just without practically anything, any externals. So we should be enlivened to try to attain that state. And the hells, they're there, and we definitely don't want to go there. But we also don't want anyone else to go there. And therefore, we have a lot to do. Hare Krishna. Okay. Any comments, questions on some of these points? And please, we have these mics.
Awesome, wonderful class.
Hare
So
Krishna,
much,
voice,
so
welcome.
relatable to what's going on right now. So I work with a lot of people, and it's like very close knit, and so we always like hear people conversing, and it seems like the topics are really right now state of the earth, right? Like floods and famine and just news. We have an abundance of news now, right? It's like your phone alerts you every news story. Yeah. And then I also hear a lot of people, and I grew up in a Catholic family, is like, over time I've learned, the church did a lot of bad things, okay? And then I got away from that, and then I went to this, and it turned out this leader was also corrupt. Okay, I left that, and then I started doing yoga, and then I found that this yoga instructor was also bad. It's like they're starting to kind of little by little lose faith in a lot of things. First, in the overall, okay, the world's too much, I can't handle that, okay? So my religious or spiritual beliefs, I've been let down by my bad examples in my family or organizations. Okay, now I'm just going to work. I'm going to work. And it seems like now it's either a lack of, I can't handle this. I'm just going to put my head down, try to work, make some money, and eat some food, whatever, sense gratification. And then you have others that are like, I'm going to be my own leader. You know what? I'm going to take from all these, and I'm going to be the master of my domain, which I see kind of now too, this kind of puffed up individual. I don't need your religion. I don't need these politics. I'll just be my own, right? Yeah. But it's like, that doesn't work, I've always kind of frowned on the term self-made, because I'm like, I didn't make myself. I don't know. I don't make the food, all of it. It takes, you need farmers, right? Yeah. So I see and I hear all this going on, and it's like, a lot of times I just want to give Krishna consciousness a chance. Give it a chance. Just, and it's like, it's so hard to reach people, because I feel like they've been so let down. They're so distracted. What are just some simple little things we can do? It's like, I wish I could just have a bunch of Bhagavad Gita's in my backpack and just be like, here, go. But it's like, people are so overwhelmed, or they're so busy. I work with people who have 2-3 jobs. So to go, here's a book, read it. What's something little that I can just give them, just give it a chance? Because that's what it is. I heard something that gave, I heard a podcast and I heard talks, and then all of a sudden it was like, I got that chance, and that's not going to be for everyone. How do I do that?
Well, there's 2 things that come to mind. First thing is prasadam. Prasadam is, people can relate to that. So learn how to make a first class, simply wonderful, it doesn't have to be too expensive, But try to get some, maybe these dates can help, These maha dates. No, but really, that softens people up. Because the thing is this almost a visceral thing. If you give somebody something to eat, that's very enjoyable and as part of a friendship, immediately they open up to you, and so they'll be more open to the message. And the other thing is that you yourself need to become fired up. You know what I mean? Chant, and read, and so that they can say, yeah, I can see you're how are you weathering all this? So, yeah. This Krishna consciousness gives me kind of a ballast so that I can, negotiate, these times. And so those 2 things, and of course, the Hare Krishna mantra, that's given. But so like this little reservoir of pleasure, these little pamphlets sometimes, because it's not such a commitment to read. Just read this one thing. There's something called on chanting, which is also very effective. And if you're they're friends with you and you keep giving them little things. Oh, listen, I tasted this. I never tasted anything like this before. You try it. And finally, at a certain point, they'll be willing to come and visit. The lounge. Come just check it out. Just come. That's how a lot of devotees get attracted. They met a devotee, and or they saw the Rath Yatra, or they got prasadam. So that's ways in which you can sell. Prabhupada was a genius, and that was Lord Chaitanya's program. For the masses, a lot of chanting and feasting, prasadam. And of course he had his devotees with him, and everything. So it's a question of just making friends. When you make friends, they're willing to listen to you, and they see, well, you've undergone, you seem pretty happy. How do you keep your spirits up? And then all these crazy things going on. Stevie says, oh, it's just chanting Hare Krishna.
Also, chant and be happy. People are inspired by this nice, simple book, Perfection of Yoga. Yes, from Balaram.
And that Coming Back book, is that still
Coming Back? Yeah, also, is very. These small books are very powerful. Yeah. And invite them to the Krishna Lounge. You can explain what's that. You get a free, vegan meal. You get wisdom talk, and little meditation. It's attractive, and this is your place where your work is pretty close by, right?
Yeah, Hillcrest area, Balboa Park.
Oh yeah. So like that.
Yeah, have them take a walk in the park. They'll meet Vijay. I'll definitely become a devotee. Okay, Moga. Oh no, you're just the mic holder. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Yes, Prabhu. There are 2 questions on the Zoom. Vijay Krishna Prabhu can go first.
Oh, that's unusual.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams, may I?
Yes, please.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, my question is, why is it that the demigods punish the sinful only with scarcity of rain and food grains? Aren't the demigods capable of eradicating the demons by fighting them and killing them in order to restore material and spiritual peace and prosperity? I'm confused here. Any help, please?
Yeah. Well, I think you're conflating a couple of things. The people in general suffer from drought and famine and all of these different things. And, they're not pure and everything, but they're not the demons who are oppressing them. So what we've been reading in the hellish chapters are they're pretty vicious, these things, that are going on. And especially you find, the special punishment for those who have knowledge and still perform these things. The Brahmins and those who violate. This is the whole thing with Dambha. You read the 16th chapter, and you'll find that this word Dambha comes up. And it's always the first word. Dambo, Darpo, Bimanascha. This is the first word. And Dambha is like, Prabhupada calls it false pride. But what it is like pretending to be religious when you're actually not, and you're a demon. This is the most dangerous thing, because people need genuine instruction in religion, but what they get is exploitation, and so this is a real demonic thing. So you can see that's the hells are especially reserved for those who are flagrant in their violation. They relish in their demonic. They enjoy hurting others and things like that. Whereas the lack of rain and all these things. This is, when there's an upsurge in irreligion, and everyone is more or less irreligious. Yes, they're sinning, but they're mostly simple people, and they're mostly, have been misguided and so forth. So they get these punishments. And it's not to say that they also don't experience some hellish punishment. But these are like the highlights. There's many other hells that may be a little less severe. So it's a question of degree and what position you have in society. We constantly hear about, you know, the Brahmins and those who are doing it. So it's yeah, the punishments are there. I mean, the punishments of birth, old age, disease, and death, which is there for everybody who's not, you know, going back to God. It is always there, and that's difficult enough. But when you really become very sinful and you know better, and you still sin, then you get the special hellish punishments. That's the way I understand it, Prabhu. Otherwise, you know, Indra will withdraw the rain, you know, or the earth won't. When people are too demoniac, the earth doesn't give grain. That happened with Prithu. You remember that? And Prithu had to chastise the earth, and he said,
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a general degrees of punishment, but everyone's suffering, you know. And there's so many, you know, insects. They used to be human beings, you know. It's dukkha aliyam ashashvatam. So we want to get out, take as many with us as we can. That's the best I can do with that. Hare Krishna.
Yes, as to be expected, Prabhu, very helpful.
Okay.
Very pleasing to the heart. Answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Number 2.
So there is a devotee on the YouTube live chat. He posted some question. The question is, most of the people know that they come to life on earth empty-handed and finally die and take nothing materialistic in their hands. Even after knowing this, why are everyone behind money and fame?
Well, I think I think a lot of people have given up on the idea, because otherwise you're going to live, you know, that there's life after death. So if you believe that you were created when you were born, and you cease to exist when you die, then it kind of makes sense to try to grab as much sense pleasure as you can, especially if you don't know that there's a higher standard of pleasure, right? And that's a big advertising thing. I remember with some beer, you grab all the gusto you can get, or something with some, you know, and then why not?
You only live once.
You only live once, yeah, and don't be FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Those go together, YOLO and FOMO. So once you accept those two sutras, then let's party, right? Where's the drugs? Where's the party? But that's a quick way to suffering, and that's why Krishna consciousness is so revolutionary, because it's so celebratory, and you can see, you know, devoted. I mean, I'm telling you, I was watching. I highly recommend this Following Srila Prabhupada series on YouTube. You know, you can see, oh man, there's the devotees. There's so much ecstasy in kirtan. Prabhupada is right there, you know. And these are people who are just smoking and drinking and, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll just, you know, 6 months ago. But now they're, you know, living a wholesome life, no sinning, following the 4 regs. And so that's possible for anyone. So once that example is there and an experience in your life, you become really willing and eager and able to give it to others. So that's the answer to that, is that people don't know, and so they're still trying to enjoy these things, and they don't have any faith because they've been cheated by so many liars and cheaters in the so-called religious stage. And that's why Prabhupada was so angry with that, people who misguide on the basis of the Gita. You know, he's so anxious to get the Gita as it is out there to countermand and counteract all of the false Gitas that are around, people misusing it for their own. So that's, you know, the genuine thing, the as it is principle. And Prabhupada didn't compromise. He never compromised on those 4 regular principles and so many other things. And so, you know, it took something to, you know, become a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and it still does. So, because it's genuine. Okay, I hope that helped.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you for nice answer. I just wanted to let you know, right now there are 35 people who is watching this class. There are 4 people on the Zoom: Danaburi Mataji, Justin Prabhu Namajia, and Vijay Krishna Prabhu. And there are 30 devotees on the YouTube, and there is a couple of more devotees on the Twitch, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay, because of that, we'll just end with one real quick poem. And this is the final instruction to take from this. Dehesti mangsadudidemi batam chajasva. This is from the Purana Puran. Jaya sutara satadam samatam vimuncha, pashyani sham jagaditam chanabhangatishtam, vairagya raga rasiko bhava bhakti nishtam. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for all you think you own. At every moment, see that your world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. Vairagya raga, get attached to detachment and become a rasika, be able to chant Hare Krishna with great pleasure. And your life will be sublime. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And don't miss Radhashtami tomorrow, 5:30 in the temple.
Very nice class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dhanavari.
Thank you.